my recent podcast called Hope Renewed, I mentioned at the start of it that I had walked through something a bit disappointing, something that was not quite what I was expecting it to be, but that the Lord had led me through that. And in the podcast, of course, I talk about hope. And at the end of it, I mentioned that I was writing down on Post-its all of the verses that had to do with hope that I could find. I started in Psalms, and Psalms is really long, so a lot of these are in Psalms, but it's amazing how much God reassures us and reminds us of hope, and our hope, especially in Him, in even just the Psalms alone. And of course in Proverbs, and now I'm moving on to other books. So I imagine I'll have quite the stack when I'm finished. But I was seeking the Lord for direction and sort of feeling like, I was in an unknown place and not really knowing which way to go. And He was so good and so faithful to respond to me by putting two things in my path. And the first was at my church, we have started a summer reading program or reading plan with the book Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. I'm going to hold it up for you guys that are watching. And it's really an inspiring book and just incredibly well thought out. And while it gives a lot of information, he does it in a way that's very easy to read. And I really appreciate it when authors do that. So I've only read the first section, but in the book, he talks about, I guess the main point of the section that I read is about discipleship. And discipleship, though, and he talks about this in the book, in the view of apprenticeship. So in the Hebrew language, the word Talmud is the word that we get disciple from. And he explains that this word simply means a student of a teacher or philosopher. Not just a learner, but a practitioner of an embodied way of life, one who is diligently working to be with and become like their master. So, of course, that makes sense for the word disciple. And he goes on to say that he would argue, not aggressively, but he would counter that and say that one of the best ways to use the word Talmud is with the word apprentice in our language, in English. So he says, to follow Jesus then meant to walk alongside him in a posture of listening, learning, observation, obedience, and imitation. And he goes into more detail on the concept of apprentice and apprenticeship. And I don't want to spoil his book, so I really encourage you to get a copy because it's really, really good. One of my favorite sections is on page 28 and 29. John Mark has been explaining up to this point, well, a lot of stuff, but in all of that, he talks about Jesus as rabbi and what that meant to the people in this time when Jesus walked the earth, and what it would have meant to his disciples, especially because at that time in history, people would become disciples of rabbis. That was something that they knew. That was something that they were aware of. But it wasn't just anybody that could do that. It was only the best of the best. People who had, studied for it, trained for it, and not even everybody that was preparing themselves for being able to be a disciple to a rabbi got to be it. They had to prove themselves to the rabbi and be selected in that sort of way. So it was very exclusive, I would say, and a lot of them got rejected. It was a very elite university is what John Mark says. And then he says, but not with Jesus, not with Rabbi Jesus. For him, it was whoever. And he goes into this by talking about when he called Simon to follow him. And so he says, whoever means whoever. Now we're finally ready to circle back to the question we began with. What would prompt Simon to drop his net on the beach, walk away from his career, and follow Jesus all on a moment's notice? And then he says, are you kidding me? He would have thought, this is the chance of a lifetime. Let me attempt a clumsy adaptation from our era. Imagine you're a high school dropout who always dreamed of becoming a professor. You wanted desperately to go to college, but you couldn't get accepted. Now, imagine you're working a dead-end job in food service. Low hourly wage and long days. One day, as you're watching the clock from behind the cash register, a world-famous professor from a prestigious university walks through the door on a pit stop from his worldwide book tour. He takes an instant liking to you and says, if you come with me right now, you can become my student. I'll give you a full-ride scholarship. You can live in my home and study under me, and I'll teach you everything I know and give you access to all of my resources. I believe that you have the capacity to one day do what I do. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done, but it will pay dividends you cannot possibly imagine. But you have to come with me now. What would you do? Well, anyone in their right mind would do. Throw your apron on the floor, dance a jig, and run out the door behind him. Simon and Andrew were fishermen. Think about that for a second. This means they didn't make it into an apprenticeship program. They weren't the best of the best. They were the ones who got sent home to make babies and pray they became rabbis. But Jesus invited them to become his apprentices. Before they believed in Jesus, he believed in them. And I just absolutely loved that, especially that last part where that Jesus believed in them first. And of course the same goes for all of us. Jesus wanted us first. And of course we know that we want to be like him. We want to be disciples and follow his ways and be apprentices under him. And as the book title says, practicing the way, be with Jesus, become like him, do as he did. And that's the ultimate goal for all of us. So when we find ourselves, like I was, in a place of discouragement or something like that, it's easy to suddenly feel very lost. But then we turn back to Jesus. Not that we turned away, but you know what I mean? But then we get back on track and we remember that it's not our understanding, it's his, and he's the one that makes our path straight. So as long as we are following after him and doing our best to imitate him and be like him and show him through us to the world, he will lead us in his way. And that feeling of discouragement or lost will go away. And suddenly we'll look back and realize, oh, okay, now this all makes sense. Now I can understand why God closed that door, because that door doesn't fit within his plan for me. And if I would have stayed in that path, then I wouldn't be where God planned for me to be right now. So that is really just, this book has been really encouraging. And in the same way, this morning, I opened up Facebook, and I don't know if you follow Nate and Christy Johnston. I've mentioned them before on the podcast, and they often will post on their website and on Facebook. I saw it on Facebook. Different words for that the Lord has given them, and they can be pretty long, but they're really spot on, and they're from the Lord. And so today's was in alignment with all that the Lord was saying to me personally, but also this word really ties into what the Lord is calling us in generations in a glow, and well, in the younger generations, even those not in a glow. But I just wanted to share a little bit of it with you. I would encourage you to go on their website, and I'll put a link in the description of this podcast so that you can find it. And it's called God is Directing Your Path, Stay the Course. So again, very much in alignment with this idea of following after Jesus and staying on the path that he's laid out for us. And so Nate and Christy, I think Nate is the one that wrote this, but just in case, I'll just cite both of them. So he said, I was asking the Lord about direction when I had a dream where the Lord spoke to me and said that the pioneers are not in an unknown, but a Macedonian call. And he references Acts 16, 6-10. So I would encourage you to go read that. But he says a Macedonian call is where it feels like God is blocking a certain way or direction you thought you were going on. It's where the blueprint and plans were set for a specific outcome and location, and God closes the door and leads you out. And I can speak from experience to say that while what I was walking through personally was something that was really great, each day that I was walking it out, I was praying and writing in my prayer journal, Lord, if this is not what you have in your will for my life, please close the door. And so it's always interesting when the answer to our prayers is actually that God does close the door. And I believe, and I truly, truly believe that when God does close the door, he is all the more with us in the closing of it, because it does hurt and he's not unaware of that. And so that was on my mind as I read this. And Nate continues to say, the Macedonian call is your redirection path onto the path you were designed to walk on, and the protection of God to steer you away from any diversion of the call upon your life. It's your realignment and recalibration back to true north and the ignition of the main message and mission God has given you. And I believe that is also for generations. Your Macedonian call is not just about you. It's about so many others, futures, and breakthroughs you don't see or comprehend right now. It's about the destiny of your children, and I would add the generations. It's about the destiny of the land you are called to. This call is a legacy-shifting call, and that is such an important note. So I wrote that down. I encourage you to also. So many have said in this season, but I need direction and clarity to know which way to go. And I was reminded of the main part of the story. Paul received a dream, an ecstatic vision of the night, when the man from Macedonia stood before him and begged him to come. Instantly, Paul received his coordinates and his mission blueprint. Suddenly, all the closed doors made sense. Suddenly, all the blocked roads felt like a saving grace. Get ready, and I would like to say, get ready, Aglow and Aglow generations. And my Aglow, well, not my, but Aglow's generation leaders especially. This is definitely for you, so I would encourage you to write this down or copy it from the website and keep it in your prayer journal and just be praying over it. Get ready to receive new updates of your mission as God hands it to you and downloads it to your heart. Fogginess and confusion is leaving. Frustration and disappointment is evaporating. You will see the hand of the Lord in what has felt like a time that his hand had lifted from your life. You'll see his hand was never more involved than in this moment. I felt that in the next few weeks and months that specific and detailed directions are coming. Many are needing strategic insight and wisdom to deal with seemingly impossible situations, and they will receive them. Thank you, Jesus. Don't think it's over for you just because you can't see how God will do it. God is about to open a new door for you where you had to walk away from the ones that would compromise your convictions or, as he said earlier, or lead you down a path that wasn't your destiny. And he closes with, oh no, it keeps going. So then he goes on to quote Jeremiah 33:3. Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. And I would encourage you, like I said, to continue reading because he has another word that's a little different, but it kind of continues on in the same idea. And so I want to read the end of it. And he said, Then I heard the Lord say, "Get fresh oil for the journey," and reminded me of the wise virgins from Matthew 25 who kept their oil full. Many pioneers have been depleted, but it's time to sit in his presence and be filled again. The road ahead needs it. Your family needs it. And Aglow, we need it. And we need each other. The new beginning and new mission requires you to be filled to overflowing for you to step into it properly. And that brings to mind the Lord telling us that it's a new day. To all the brave ones carving a new and unknown path right now, thank you. Heaven is cheering you on. It doesn't make sense to you, and others don't understand either, yet you keep going. Thank you. You battle so many doubts, fears, failure, persecution, judgment, and warfare, yet you keep charging forward. Thank you. You are champions. The future is secure because of your yes right now. You may not feel like your steps are accomplishing anything, but one day you'll see the roads are clearing in the dark, lit up with lights, and many traveling on them. And then at the end, he closes by quoting Psalm 27:13. I would have despaired unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And all that to say that if you are walking through a season of discouragement or wondering about the journey that you've been on or doors that the Lord has closed recently or even in the past and not really sure where the Lord is leading you in, maybe it feels like you just don't know that he has something for you, even though, deep down I know that he does. It's easy to fall into that mindset that can kind of become a trap to us sometimes of, Lord, I believe this, but what if I'm wrong? What if that isn't what you have for my future? And I read something online that said, if your thought starts with, or not your thought, if your thought starts with what if, it's probably not from the Lord, because the Lord works in absolutes. So just remember that a lot of our doubts and our feelings of failure or worries of failure or whatever, often those do start with what if, and then a sentence that includes some sort of worry. So if you find yourself with what if sort of thoughts, turn to Jesus and give those to him. Give him the what ifs, and he will give you the absolutes. And I know that because I've experienced it, and we read about it, and it's confirmed in scripture. And so I want to close with this scripture from Psalms. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain. And I hope that this word today from John Mark Comer and Nate and Christy Johnston, I hope that for you, the Lord used this to answer that for you as well. So I hope many blessings for you in the week ahead, and I'll see you next time.